Censorship is seeming to be coming full circle. Years ago, Nintendo had a draconian censorship policy, and for a brief time there was very little censorship. Censorship seems to be coming back with a vengeance, to games and to movies and films as well. This is no more apparent than with the localization Nintendo is making Atlus make to Tokyo Mirage Sessions. I will point out a lot of these changes because that game is a perfect example of why censorship is a disaster. But I think it's important to first address the differences between translations, localization, and censorship. Most people understand translations. It is swapping out words in foreign languages, so a piece of art can be understood. Localization is closely tied to translation and is a key part of the translation process. Localization changes are changes made so that a work of art makes sense culturally. An example would be changing imagery or signs to match the equivalent in another region, or swapping a saying or proverb from one culture with a similar saying or proverb that makes much more sense. Or carefully rewording poetry so it remains poetic. This is invaluable, as many Japanese sayings lose much in translation, and translate to relative nonsense, and can confuse players or break immersion. Localization can also be a detriment if a game or movie is set in a very defined location. Arguably, Phoenix Wright suffers from having been localized, given much of the Japanese culture. There's also no need to localize if something doesn't translate in a potentially confusing way. Censorship is a change made to satisfy a cultural attitude part of a region may hold, or to remove something a segment of a population may not like. An example would be Germany's gross overreaction to the inclusion of Nazi references or anything that may promote national pride. Yeah, World War II led to some absurdly bad censorship in Germany, which is sad because the Nazis weren't open about their unsavory values, and the Germans who knew usually directly opposed the Nazi regime and trafficked targets to safety, but that's another topic. The fundamental problem with censorship is it is unnecessary and normalizes unreasonable beliefs, such as that anyone has the right to never see or acknowledge something that makes them uncomfortable, or that they don't like. Nintendo was strict about any religious references to not offend the vocal atheist minorities, who are offended to acknowledge anyone has a faith, and the vocal Christian camps who don't like glorifying pagan religions, by acknowledging their existence. The boob slider in Xenoblade X and face touching in Fire Emblem were removed so as to not make SJWs, who don't play games, uncomfortable. The thing is, nobody has a right to be granted ignorance from what they don't like. That is unreasonable. There are plenty of things that I don't like or make me uncomfortable, but I don't expect the world to adapt to my special snowflake needs. Other people may like it, good for them. I have the same problem with SJWs as I have with the Christian religion. There are vocal camps of Christians who want to legislate their morality. If they want to live to the church's moral code, good for them. But it is unreasonable to try to force Jews, atheists, and other religions to follow their denomination's values. It's just as unreasonable as a gay couple insisting a specific bakery give them a wedding cake. I don't agree with a business denying someone service for such a reason, and it is terrible business to do so, but it is still the business's right to deny anyone service and run their business into the ground. They just don't like the way you look or talk. They can deny you service and lose your business as you go find a competing business who values you as a customer. It is survival of the fittest business. There's no need for a witch hunt. Bad business practices will kill a bad business. Okay, I kind of got off track, but it's basically the same thing. If you don't like how a game portrays a woman, just don't support it. You don't have the right to deny women the right to adjust their busts because you take it as sexualization. I thought the face touching was unfitting for a strategy war game, but if they were going to go with it, they should have gone with it in all regions. Tokyo Mirage Sessions #FE or #FE, if you want to be silly, highlights another problem though. Several actually. Everybody knew the game was getting a lazy translation, which means the battle dialogue, which seems to include several story segments, is neither dubbed or subbed. But covering up characters in this T-rated game is of utmost importance. Who cares about making it so the game can be understood and enjoyed? We have to make sure cleavage in DLC doesn't make anyone uncomfortable. Their priorities are completely backwards with that game, and it's insulting. If they actually translated the game fully, the censorship wouldn't be as bad, but it would still be unnecessary and stupid. This censorship goes even further by replacing character development or a girl gains body confidence with a Fire Emblem Awakening style character quirk, where she never knows how to pose for a picture. Imagine if Kellum had a character arc, but it was localized into the gag he has overlooked. I don't care what it is, you don't bastardize the plot or remove character development to avoid upsetting overly sensitive entitled babies. Guess what though? Sarkeesian has gotten to France, and now some in the French government want to censor games for such perceived sexism or sexualization, which will probably affect the world unless the industry just makes the French import games from the rest of the PAL region. The most perfect response to this push for censorship would be to place a public domain image such as this on any game that was forced to be changed to censorship, and potentially intentionally lazy and bare minimum censorship, like changing the declared sex of clearly female characters in the French translations. So any potentially problematic character is declared as a straight male.